Who was the woman who outsmarted the wisest king? How did she change the rules of an entire kingdom? And why was her story hidden for thousands of years? In a time when women were told to be quiet and obey, one woman dared to challenge King Solomon himself. Get ready for a tale of courage that will blow your mind. The secret of King Solomon's court is finally revealed. Beauty and power can be a dangerous mix, especially in ancient times. But what happens when one woman has both? A woman so beautiful she could win the heart of mighty King Solomon, yet so strong-willed she dared to go against his rules. This is the tale of the most stunning and powerful wife in Solomon's harem. Her name was Naamah, and she stood up to the most powerful man of her time. Are you ready to uncover the secrets of this amazing woman and see how she changed one of history's greatest kings? But first, let's find out who this woman was. Where did she come from? And how did her actions change history? Our story begins in Jerusalem, where gold sparkled everywhere you looked. King Solomon was at the height of his power. He surrounded himself with riches and knowledge from all over the world. His court was a mix of different cultures, languages, and beliefs, all under his rule. But beneath all the shine, trouble was brewing. In the heart of one woman, a seed of rebellion had started to grow. She came to Jerusalem as a gift, a peace offering from a faraway land. Her beauty was legendary, more stunning than even the prettiest of Solomon's many wives. Men said that looking at her face was like seeing heaven. But it wasn't just her looks that made her special. This woman had a sharp mind and a strong spirit. From the moment she arrived, she watched, she listened, she learned. While others only saw the beautiful outside of Solomon's court, she saw the cracks hiding underneath. As she settled into Solomon's grand court, whispers began to spread. Among all the faces, one stood out, and her presence was about to change everything. The air in the palace felt heavy with excitement. People whispered behind fancy fans, trying to catch a glimpse of the newcomer. Who was this woman who walked with such quiet confidence in front of the great King Solomon? Her name was Naamah, and she came from the far-off land of Ammon. She was the daughter of a less powerful king, sent to make peace between the kingdoms. But Naamah wasn't just a pawn in a political game. With every step she took through the golden halls, she left a mark on the hearts and minds of those around her. Naamah's journey to Jerusalem had been long and hard. She crossed deserts and mountains, leaving behind everything she knew. The ways of her homeland, with its own gods and traditions, were very different from Jerusalem's. But Naamah brought with her not just the jewels of a princess, but also the wisdom of her people and the strength of her beliefs. When she first entered Solomon's court, everyone fell silent. Her beauty was amazing, but it was the intelligence shining in her eyes that really caught people's attention. Solomon, sitting on his golden throne, found himself leaning forward, curious about this newcomer who seemed so different from his other wives. Solomon, known for his wisdom, was intrigued by this beautiful new addition to his harem. He sought her out, eager to talk with someone who saw the world differently. Their conversations were like complex dances, each step bringing them closer to understanding and conflict. In the days that followed, Solomon and Naamah talked for hours, from sunset to sunrise. They debated big ideas, compared different ways of ruling, and explored their different faiths. Solomon found in Naamah an equal in thinking, someone who could challenge his ideas and make him see things in new ways. But as they grew closer, tensions in the court also grew. Other wives became jealous of the attention Solomon gave Naamah. Advisors whispered worries about how this foreign woman might influence their king. And the priests of Jerusalem watched nervously as Solomon seemed to listen to ideas that challenged their religious beliefs. Just when Solomon thought he understood Naamah, everything changed in a way no one saw coming. What happened next would leave even the wisest king questioning everything he knew. As Solomon tried to figure out this mysterious queen, he found himself caught up in a game he hadn't expected to play. But who was really in control, the king or the queen? One morning, as the sun was just rising over Jerusalem, Solomon made a big announcement. His messengers ran through the narrow streets and grand avenues, shouting his decree. Everyone in his kingdom must bow before the Ark of the Covenant. Solomon wanted this to bring his people together under one faith, to make his big empire stronger. Solomon didn't make this decision lightly. He spent nights praying and thinking, asking for guidance from God. He talked with his advisors about what this might mean for his rule. In the end, he thought it was necessary to strengthen his power and bring his diverse kingdom together under one religious banner. But for Naamah, this order felt like a punch to her heart. In the quiet of her room, she struggled with Solomon's words. How could she, a woman with deep faith in her own traditions, bow to a God she didn't know? The conflict tore at her. But with each passing moment, her determination only grew stronger. Naamah spent hours reading the holy books of her people, looking for guidance and strength. She thought about the teachings from her childhood, the stories of her ancestors who stood firm in their beliefs, even when things were tough. As the day of the ceremony got closer, she made up her mind. As the big day approached, tension filled the air like a coming storm. People whispered their worries and prayed fervently. Would everyone really bow? What would happen to those who refused? The day of the ceremony dawned bright and clear. The streets of Jerusalem were packed with people from every corner of Solomon's vast kingdom. They wore their best clothes, a sea of colors and fabrics from many different cultures. The air smelled of incense, and the sound of thousands of voices filled the air. The people of Jerusalem gathered, most of them bowing their heads and kneeling. But in the middle of the crowd, one person stood tall. Naamah, with her head held high, refused to kneel. Gasps spread through the crowd. All eyes turned to Solomon, waiting to see how he would respond to this brave act. The air felt thick with tension as the king and queen looked at each other across the crowded square. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The crowd held its breath, waiting for Solomon's reaction. Would his famous wisdom lead him to be merciful? Or would his pride as a king demand harsh punishment? Solomon's advisors called for punishment. She must be made an example, they insisted. No one can question your authority. But Solomon hesitated. For the first time in his rule, he found himself truly challenged. Not by armies or rival kings, but by the quiet strength of one woman. What happened next would echo through history, changing how people thought about faith and ruling. But before we reveal what happened in this amazing standoff, we need to understand what was really going on. The tension in Jerusalem had been building for years. Solomon's rule brought great wealth and growth, but it also brought big changes to the religious and cultural life of Israel. His marriages to foreign wives, including Naamah, brought new customs and beliefs into the court. Some people saw this as a rich exchange of ideas, while others thought it was dangerous to their faith. The priests of Jerusalem were especially worried. They saw Solomon's acceptance of other religions as a threat to their power and to the purity of their faith. Many saw this order to bow before the ark as Solomon's attempt to bring back the importance of the God of Israel. But for others, like Naamah, it felt like a troubling move towards forcing religion on people. The big question at the heart of this conflict was one that would be asked throughout history. Can true faith be ordered by a king, or must it come from the believer's heart? All of Jerusalem held its breath, but what happened next would leave everyone speechless and change the rules of power forever. But before moving on to the next section, do you know someone who loves to learn about the hidden stories of cunning and faith? Then share this video with them. Our channel Christ Callings brings fresh content twice a week related to the hidden mysteries of cunning and great escapes of history. Let's get back to the video. At that moment, the room fell silent. The air felt heavy with tension. Queen Naamah stood tall and defiant, her chin raised, her eyes burning with a fire that could melt even Solomon's legendary wisdom. The king looked around at the crowd, at his advisors and courtiers all holding their breath. When Solomon finally spoke, his words didn't just break the silence. They broke 1,000 years of tradition. Why? He asked, his voice carrying across the quiet courtyard. It was a simple question, but it held the weight of kingdoms. In that one word, Solomon showed why he was truly considered wise. He wanted to understand, not to punish. The simplicity of Solomon's question caught everyone off guard. Here was the wisest man in the world, the king whose judgments were legendary, asking not for obedience, but for understanding. It was a moment people would talk about for generations. Naamah's answer was just as thoughtful, her voice clear and steady. "O wise king," she began, "you who have been blessed with understanding beyond measure, tell me this, does true faith need to be forced?" Her words hung in the air, challenging not just Solomon, but every person there. The crowd shifted uneasily, thinking about the deep question she had asked. Is faith stronger when people choose it freely, or when it's forced by a king's order? Naamah's question went right to the heart of a debate that had been simmering in Solomon's court for a long time. It was about the very nature of belief, about how political power and spiritual authority are connected, and about how much a ruler can control what people believe in their hearts. Solomon's forehead wrinkled as he thought about her words. The silence went on for what felt like forever, and then, to everyone's surprise, a smile slowly spread across the king's face. "You have given me much to think about," he said, his voice full of admiration. "Perhaps there is wisdom in letting people come to faith in their own time, in their own way." But this wasn't the end of the matter. While Solomon might have been moved by Naamah's words, others in his court weren't so easily convinced. The high priest stepped forward, his face red with anger. "My king," he said, his voice shaking with fury, "surely you cannot let this sin go unpunished. The law is clear. Everyone must bow before the ark." The high priest's words brought all the tensions in the court to a boiling point. He represented not just the religious leaders, but also a powerful political force in Jerusalem. His words carried the weight of centuries of tradition and the support of a powerful group of priests. And so the stage was set for a showdown that would shake Solomon's kingdom to its core. On one side stood Naamah, standing up for the right to believe what you want. On the other, the religious leaders demand that everyone follow the same rules. The air crackled with tension as Solomon found himself caught between two powerful forces. His reputation as a fair and wise ruler hung in the balance. How could he keep his kingdom united while also respecting the different beliefs of his people? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Solomon's mind raced. The weight of his decision felt like a heavy burden on his shoulders. He knew that whatever choice he made would echo through the ages, shaping the future of his kingdom, and maybe even changing how people thought about faith itself. In this moment, Solomon wasn't just a king making a political decision. He was a man wrestling with big questions about faith, ruling, and human nature. The wisdom he was famous for was being put to its biggest test. But before we reveal his choice, let's think about what was really at stake here. This wasn't just about one woman refusing to bow. It was about the very nature of faith itself. Can true devotion be commanded, or must it come from the heart, freely given? The crowd waited, hardly daring to breathe, as Solomon opened his mouth to give his verdict. But fate, it seemed, had one more surprise in store. Something strange happened. A dove, pure white and shining in the fading sunlight, flew down from the sky. It circled the courtyard once, twice, before landing on Naamah's shoulder. The crowd gasped. Was this a sign from heaven? Even Solomon looked shocked by this unexpected event. Naamah, however, stayed calm, gently stroking the bird's feathers as if it was the most natural thing in the world. In ancient times, people often saw things like this as messages from God. The appearance of the dove, a symbol of peace and purity in many cultures, added a new layer to an already tense situation. Some in the crowd saw it as a sign that God favored Naamah, while others thought it was a call for peace and understanding. At that moment, something changed in Solomon's eyes. He saw not just a beautiful woman or a rebellious subject, but someone touched by divine grace, and in her, he recognized a strength that matched his own. "Let it be known," Solomon proclaimed, his voice ringing out across the silent courtyard, "that from this day forward, all within our kingdom shall be free to worship as their conscience guides them. For true faith cannot be commanded, only inspired." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded in approval, while others frowned in confusion. The high priest looked like he had swallowed something sour, but Naamah simply smiled, a smile that spoke of freedom and hope. Solomon's announcement was revolutionary for its time. In an age where religion and government were often the same thing, where kings claimed to rule by God's will, Solomon was suggesting a radical new idea, that faith should be a personal choice, not something ordered by the state. Now, you might think this is where our story ends, but hold on to your seats, because the real revelation is yet to come, one that connects ancient wisdom with a surprising truth. The tale of Solomon and his defiant queen echoes through the ages. But the story doesn't end there. Solomon's decision set off a chain of events that would reshape his kingdom in ways no one could have predicted. In the days that followed, Naamah became a symbol of religious tolerance and personal courage. People from all parts of the kingdom looked up to her, eager to learn from her quiet strength and unwavering faith. The streets of Jerusalem buzzed with excited talk, as ordinary people debated what the king's new policy might mean. Naamah's influence spread far beyond the palace walls. She became a supporter of scholars and artists, encouraging the free exchange of ideas. Under her guidance, Jerusalem became a place of learning where different philosophical and religious ideas could be studied and debated openly. Solomon, too, found himself drawn to her more and more. Their talks, once like intellectual battles, now became deep explorations of faith, governing, and the human heart. He found in her an equal partner to his legendary wisdom, someone who could challenge him to see beyond what he thought he knew. Together, Solomon and Naamah started a series of changes that would transform the kingdom. They set up schools where children of all faiths could learn together, helping them understand and befriend each other from a young age. They made laws protecting the rights of religious minorities, making sure all citizens could practice their faith without fear. As word of Solomon's decision spread, it attracted scholars, mystics, and seekers from far and wide. Jerusalem became a center of learning and spiritual exploration, where ideas flowed as freely as the wine at Solomon's famous feasts. The city buzzed with new energy, as people from different faiths and cultures came together to share their beliefs and learn from each other. The Great Library of Jerusalem, started by Solomon and overseen by Naamah, became famous throughout the ancient world. It held writings from every known religion and philosophy, becoming a beacon for scholars and wisdom seekers from across the known world. But not everyone was happy with these changes. The old guard, those who had long benefited from the strict structures of power and faith, began to whisper in dark corners. They saw Naamah's influence as a threat to everything they held dear. The priests especially felt their power slipping away. For centuries, they had been the only ones to interpret God's will, the go-betweens for the people and their God. Now, with Solomon's decree of religious freedom, their control over spiritual matters was threatened. Plots were hatched in shadowy rooms, and secret alliances were formed. For while Solomon's word was law, some believed that law could be changed, or that rulers could be replaced. The air in the palace grew thick with suspicion and fear. In the markets and taverns of Jerusalem, rumors began to spread. Some whispered that Naamah was a witch who had put a spell on the king. Others claimed that Solomon had abandoned the faith of his fathers, led astray by foreign gods. These whispers, carefully spread by those who opposed the new changes, began to spread like wildfire throughout the kingdom. As tensions rose, Naamah found herself at the center of a growing storm. Threats were made against her life, and whispers of betrayal echoed through the palace halls. Yet she remained strong, her faith unshaken, her determination only growing stronger in the face of danger. One night, as Naamah walked alone in the palace gardens, seeking peace under the starry sky, a shadowy figure emerged from behind a cypress tree. The glint of a dagger caught the moonlight, and Naamah's heart raced, but instead of fear, she felt a strange calm come over her. "Why do you want to hurt me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the danger. The would-be killer hesitated, surprised by how calm she was. "You threaten everything we hold sacred," he hissed. Naamah took a step closer, her eyes full of kindness. "And what is so sacred that you need to use violence to protect it?" Her words seemed to pierce the attacker's resolve. His hand shook, and the dagger fell to the ground. In that moment, Naamah saw not an enemy, but a troubled soul. She reached out, offering understanding instead of anger. "Tell me," she said gently, "what fears drive you to do this?" The attacker, a young priest named Zadok, fell to his knees. Tears ran down his face as he poured out his heart. He spoke of his fear that the old ways were being forgotten, that the faith that had kept his people strong for generations was being thrown away. Naamah listened patiently, her heart full of compassion. When Zadok finished speaking, she knelt beside him. "Your faith isn't threatened by what others believe," she said softly. "True faith grows stronger when challenged, not weaker. The God you serve is surely great enough to handle questions and doubts." As the sun rose over Jerusalem, word of Naamah's act of mercy spread quickly. The failed attack had only made her position stronger and won her more admirers. People marveled at her courage and wisdom, seeing in her a living example of the very tolerance and compassion that Solomon's decree had aimed for. Zadok, the would-be attacker, became an unexpected ally. Moved by Naamah's kindness, he began to speak out among his fellow priests, urging them to embrace the new era of openness and dialogue. His story was powerful, and many who had been unsure about the changes began to think differently. But the threat wasn't completely gone. There were still those who clung to the old ways, who saw Solomon and Naamah's vision as a threat to their power and way of life. They retreated to the shadows, plotting and waiting for a chance to strike. Solomon, aware of the dangers surrounding his beloved queen, faced a tough decision. Should he take back his decree of religious freedom to please his enemies? Or should he stand firm, even if it meant risking his throne? The king spent long nights in prayer and deep thought wrestling with this problem. He talked to his advisors, thought about the political consequences, and looked for wisdom in the sacred texts. But in the end, it was a talk with Naamah that helped him find clarity. "My love," Naamah said as they walked together in the cool evening air, "a kingdom built on fear and forcing people is like a house built on sand. It might stand for a while, but eventually it will fall. But a kingdom built on justice, compassion, and freedom, that's a kingdom that will last." The answer, when it came, surprised everyone, including Solomon himself. For in the darkest hour, when all seemed lost, he found strength not in his famous wisdom, but in the example of the woman who had dared to stand up to him. Standing before his gathered court, Solomon declared, "I have ruled this kingdom with the wisdom given to me by God. But today, I have learned that true wisdom lies not in commanding others, but in seeing the spark of the divine in every soul. From this day forward, our kingdom shall be governed not by the rules of any one faith, but by principles of justice and compassion that go beyond all creeds." A hush fell over the court as the weight of Solomon's words sank in. Then slowly, a ripple of applause began, growing into a thunderous cheer. Even some of those who had opposed the changes found themselves moved by the king's courage and vision. With these words, Solomon not only secured his place in history as a truly wise ruler, but also ensured that the legacy of the defiant queen would live on for generations to come. In the days and weeks that followed, Solomon and Naamah worked tirelessly to bring their vision to life. They set up a council with representatives from all faiths to advise on matters of religious policy. They made laws protecting the rights of religious minorities and promoting dialogue between different faiths. As the years passed, Jerusalem flourished under this new era of tolerance and intellectual freedom. The city became a beacon of hope in a world often torn apart by religious fights. Pilgrims and scholars from distant lands flocked to Solomon's court, eager to see firsthand the harmony that could exist between different faiths. The great library of Jerusalem, once just a dream, became a reality. Its shelves were filled with scrolls from every corner of the known world. Scholars of all faiths worked side by side, translating texts, debating ideas, and pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. Naamah, once an outsider, became beloved by the people. Her advice was sought not just by Solomon, but by citizens from all walks of life. She set up schools where children of different faiths could learn together, fostering understanding and friendship from an early age. One of Naamah's most lasting achievements was the creation of the houses of wisdom throughout the kingdom. These were places of learning and dialogue where people of all faiths could come together to study, debate, and learn from one another. The houses of wisdom became models for similar places throughout the ancient world, their influence spreading far beyond the borders of Solomon's kingdom. But perhaps the most profound change was in Solomon himself. The king who had once tried to force everyone to believe the same thing now championed diversity. He ordered the building of a great library, where the sacred texts and philosophical writings of all faiths could be studied side by side. Solomon's transformation was clear in how he ruled. He became known not just for his wisdom in making judgments, but for his ability to bring people together, to find common ground among different viewpoints. His court became a model of good governance, studied and copied by rulers throughout the region. The story of Solomon and Naamah spread far and wide, carried by merchants and travelers to the farthest corners of the known world. It inspired other rulers to rethink how they dealt with religious diversity in their own lands. The wisdom of Solomon took on new meaning, including not just clever judgments but a deep understanding of human nature and the complexities of faith. And yet, even as Jerusalem prospered, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, for the enemies of change had not been defeated, merely driven underground. They waited, watched, and plotted, determined to bring back what they saw as the natural order. In the neighboring kingdoms, rulers watched the transformation of Jerusalem with a mix of awe and fear. Some saw in Solomon and Naamah's policies a threat to their own power, worried that their own people might demand similar freedoms. Others saw an opportunity, thinking that a kingdom divided by diverse beliefs would be weak and easy to conquer. As Solomon's reign entered its later years, these outside pressures began to grow. Armies gathered on the borders, alliances shifted, and the delicate balance of power in the region began to wobble. Yet even in the face of these growing threats, Solomon and Naamah stood firm in their commitment to their vision. They believed that a kingdom united by respect and understanding, rather than forced to be the same, would have the strength to withstand any outside threat. But at this point, we are left to wonder about the lasting impact of this remarkable time in history. Did Solomon and Naamah's dream of a truly diverse society survive the challenges that followed? How did their ideas influence the development of religious thought and practice in the centuries to come? The legacy of Solomon and Naamah challenges us to question what we think we know, to look for wisdom in unexpected places, and to stand firm in our beliefs while respecting the beliefs of others. This is a tale of defiance, beauty, and power that challenges everything we thought we knew about this legendary ruler. Solomon's words still echoed through the stunned court, but beyond those walls, another tale of defiance was unfolding. In the dark alleys of Jerusalem, where whispers could kill and loyalty was bought with blood, one man's wit outsmarted an army of assassins. Do you think you know the Apostle Paul? Think again. A city filled with tension, 40 men bound by a solemn oath to taste neither food nor water until they've spilled the blood of one man. Their target? But Paul isn't just any prey. He's a man of sharp mind and unwavering faith, about to prove that sometimes the pen truly is mightier than the sword. How did Paul uncover a plot so secret? What cunning plan did he devise to slip through the fingers of those who swore to take his life? So if you thought Paul was just a preacher penning letters, prepare to have your mind blown. This is Paul as you've never seen him before, hunted, cornered, yet always one step ahead. The chase is on. The stakes are life and death. Click on the video appearing on your screen to see faith and cunning collide most unexpectedly.